Thank you. Good evening. We're happy to have you here tonight. This is our third concert, second one outdoors of our summer season. And tonight, the theme of our program is Star Spangled Spectacular. This is really a birthday party for the United States. Tomorrow's our birthday. So you're going to hear a number of familiar patriotic songs tonight, maybe a few not so familiar. And as always, we opened with a familiar song, God Bless America, which was written by Irving Berlin in it was written before 1938, but it was first introduced in 1938 on the Kate Smith radio show. So God Bless America. And before we move on to the next piece, I just want to, first of all, thank our sponsor tonight, Doyle's Dogs, and to let you all know that, where are they, over there?
No, he's right at the picnic table.
Oh, back at the picnic table, Mr. Doyle has some popsicles for anybody who thinks it might be a pleasant thing to have on a night like this. So I hope you'll excuse me. I'm going to be gone for about 10 minutes while I get a popsicle. No, just kidding. All right. Thank Mr. Doyle for that contribution tonight. Our next piece is one of those marches from the golden era of marches that you'd expect to hear at a summer band concert. This is a Hall of Fame march by Joseph Olivadotti. It was written and performed by Bachman's $1 Million Band, which was a big number back in 1930. It's one of those rousing marches that you'd expect to hear. So, Hall of Fame march. Watch for the dynamics. All right, we're going to continue with a song that almost all of you will know, I'm sure. Your Grand Old Flag was written by George M. Cohan for his 1906 stage musical, George Washington Jr. The song was introduced to the public in the play's first act on opening night, February 6, 1906, in New York's Herald Square Theater. It was the first song from a musical to sell over 1 million copies of sheet music. The original lyric for this perennial Cohan favorite came, as Cohan later explained, from an encounter he had with a Civil War veteran who fought at Gettysburg. The two men found themselves next to each other, and Cohan noticed the vet held a carefully folded but ragged old flag. The man reportedly then turned to Cohan and said, "She's a grand old rag." The man, Cohan, thought it was a great line and originally named his tune, "You're a Grand Old Rag." And I know this for a fact. I have an old Victrola record where that is the label, "You're a Grand Old Rag." But so many groups and individuals objected to calling the flag a rag, however, that he gave them what they wanted and switched the words, renaming the song to "You're a Grand Old Flag." With repeats, we're not afraid. Carl King was largely a self-taught musician who bought his first instrument, a cornet, with money he earned from his paper route. He grew up with very little schooling of any kind. He left school around the 8th grade at the age of 14. His only music instruction included assistance from local musicians when he played brass instruments in the Canton, Ohio Marine Band. He also had 4 piano lessons and 1 harmony lesson from a musical show director named William Bradford. That was the extent of his musical training. Yet, despite this, King went on to compose many, many, many pieces for band. He wrote what's considered the most famous circus march, Barnum and Bailey's favorite. Last week, you heard the last march he ever composed, Hometown Boy March. Tonight, we're going to play one of the first marches he wrote early in his career in 1920. This is Hosts of Freedom. There's no more fitting time to remember and recognize those among us who've served in the armed forces than on Independence Day. Tonight, we're going to present a salute to the men and women of our armed forces. In this Armed Forces salute, we ask that if you are a veteran of one of the branches of the military, that you stand and be recognized when the song representing your branch of the service is played. And I'll give you a little hint in case you aren't remembering them, but first one's the Army, caissons. Second one, Coast Guard, Semper Paratus. Third one, U.S. Marines, Marines hymn. Fourth one, the Air Force, off we go into the wild blue yonder. And finally, the U.S. Navy, anchors away. Thank you, and thank you to all the veterans here tonight for the service you've given to the country. We do appreciate it, and we hope to show you a little of that with playing this. All right, I'm going to try to move these so I can call out the different ones as they come up. Okay. United States Army. The men and women of the United States Coast Guard. Men and women of the United States Marine Corps. Men and women of the United States Air Force. Men and women of the United States Navy. Okay, thank you. The march, Wisconsin Forward Forever, was composed by John Philip Sousa in 1917. He originally entitled it Solid Men to the Front and dedicated it to the faculty, students, and alumni of the University of Wisconsin. It was probably named in recognition of our soldiers then overseas in World War I. The name was later changed to Wisconsin Forward Forever, and the trio of this march, you may notice, is a familiar melody. It's been played at every pregame show for the 50 years that Mike Leckrone has been the band director. You may recognize it. The Music Man was a musical by Meredith Willson. It was first performed in 1957. Wilson had a career as a band leader for several prominent radio shows, and since I'm an old radio buff, I know this, but including the George Burns and Gracie Allen show. The show, The Music Man, was a hit on Broadway. It was made into a movie in 1962 with Robert Preston and Shirley Jones, and more recently has again been made into a movie with Matthew Broderick, some years after he was Ferris Bueller. 76 Trombones has been a popular piece of Americana. I'm pretty sure you'll also recognize the Wells Fargo Wagon and Till There Was You. Highlights from The Music Man. I Can't Stop Loving You. We go to Dirty Four at the end. At Dakota, yep. Okay. All right, I think we'd be doing a disservice to any birthday party for the USA if we didn't include something representative of country music in the program. I Can't Stop Loving You was written and recorded by Don Gibson in 1958. It's been performed, however, by many, many more artists, including Ray Charles, Roy Orbison, Jim Reeves, Frank Sinatra, and it goes on and on. In fact, at the time of Gibson's death in 2003, the song had been recorded by more than 700 artists. So tonight, since Dave Grumman's recording us, I think we're about to be 701. Here we go, playing I Can't Stop Loving You. Okay, we'll make the Billboard chart. Give me 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take that, Ray Charles. On this birthday party of the United States today, and really tomorrow, it's well to remember that we've weathered some pretty big challenges over the last 243 years. Probably the greatest challenge to the survival of the USA was the Civil War. The next piece we're going to play, Last Full Measure, commemorates the Battle of Gettysburg that took place on July 1 to 3 of 1863. The battle was a turning point in the Civil War and claimed the largest number of casualties to that time. In dedicating the cemetery near the battle site, Lincoln gave his famous address, which honored those soldiers who had given the last full measure of devotion. This piece features tunes that were popular during the time, including The Girl I Left Behind Me, When Johnny Comes Marching Home, Johnny Is Gone for a Soldier, Battle Cry of Freedom, and the Battle Hymn of the Republic, the last full measure. Henry Fillmore was a composer of marches in the 19th and 20th century. And last week we performed one of his trombone smears called Laz's Trombone. Tonight we play what he considered to be his best march. In 1928 he introduced it with his band in Cincinnati, where it was very well received, but he hadn't yet named it, so there wasn't a title for it. When it was published the next year in 1929, the title he decided on was Americans We, and he dedicated it to all of us. What could be more appropriate for an Independence Day birthday party for the U.S.? So for all of us, Americans We. Remember in the trio when I go like this, you have a little break there, right? Think about it, trumpet. How long? Here we go. One, two. Looks like we're going to beat whatever weather's coming over from Sauk City, so that's good. Earlier we played a George M. Cohan piece, Grand Old Flag. We now play what is probably a tie for popularity with Grand Old Flag, his most popular song, Yankee Doodle Boy, also known as I'm a Yankee Doodle Dandy. It's a patriotic song from Broadway, a musical, Little Johnny Jones, written by Cohan was introduced in 1904. The play concerns the trials and tribulations of a fictional American jockey and who rides a horse named Yankee Doodle. The song was performed by James Cagney in 1942 in the movie Yankee Doodle Dandy. And Cohan was at one point called the King of Broadway in the early 1900s. He had 4 or 5 shows playing at the same time on Broadway, and he would time the starts, the beginnings of the show, so that he could move from theater to theater to direct the overture of each of those. So I think he kind of liked being the center of attention, but who am I to complain, you know? Okay. All right, Yankee Doodle Dandy. Now, at the end of this, so we don't get in this battle again, I'm probably going to signal you to stand up. So, then you stand up. And, yeah, from 20, you jump from 29 to 44. Okay?
Are you sure you're done?
Our last piece, prior to the Star Spangled Banner, is a piece that's become kind of an iconic piece of classical music that's played on the 4th of July. Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. Now, it's funny that it's played on the 4th of July because the 1812 Overture does not refer to the War of 1812 in the United States. It refers to the Russians stopping Napoleon at Moscow in 1812. Tchaikovsky wrote this to celebrate Russia's defeat of Napoleon, and the overture begins with an Orthodox Russian hymn, includes the Russian national anthem, God Save the Tsar, the French national anthem, La Marseillaise, and you're going to hear the church bells of Moscow ringing in triumph. The French troops are blown to smithereens, as represented by the sound of cannon. It will be coming from these speakers. The overture became part of the 4th of July thanks to Arthur Fiedler, the director of the Boston Pops. In 1974, as a publicity stunt, he decided to do this and do it with live cannons. And since he did that, it's become done quite often. And we're going to continue that tradition here tonight with 1812 Overture. Thank you. And we sincerely hope you have a glorious 4th tomorrow. We hope to see you at our next concert on July 17th and again on July 20th for the Lake Mills Art Festival. And I want to thank our sponsor tonight, Doyle's Dogs. We had hoped to have Pat Doyle guest conduct tonight, but something came up making it impossible for him to participate, so we look forward to having him guest conduct again in the not-too-distant future. Thank you for being here tonight, and we ask you to rise and join us in the singing of our national anthem. Good job. Don't forget to get... Thank you.
Over on the attendance, by the attendance, please, flavors, please.